for some context, I was 18 when this happened to me, but I absolutely did not look my age. I'm a very petite female, really short and skinny, and with a baby face. So I actually look about 14 to 15. I'm also not conventionally attractive, given that I can pass as a very lanky boy if I'm not wearing makeup or if I wear male clothes, which I do often because they're comfortable and have pockets. I also have to note that I live in Mexico, and this happened around a time when there was a wave of female kidnappings around my city. It started when my mom and my aunt decided to go get some lunch one day after school. I hadn't had classes that day, so I was going to meet them at the restaurant when they arrived. This restaurant was on a very busy street called Chapultepec, where there are always people dancing, having concerts, selling things, etc. So, being always buzzing with hundreds of people, it's hard to stand out. But also everyone minds their own business, and it isn't common that people approach you. I was walking there alone as I was going to meet my mom and aunt, but suddenly I felt how someone grabbed me by the wrist and pulled me over. When I looked, there was this man, probably around his 30s, smiling at me in a generally charming manner. He wasn't the typical creepy guy. He was tall, blue eyes, and a nice smile. Nothing about his appearance really gave off any red flags, but still, something about the situation seemed off somehow. "Hi, you are a beautiful girl. What's your name? Want to go grab some coffee?" Mind you, I look 14 and wearing boy clothes. I'm also sweaty from walking a long distance in the Mexican sun. I was not a beautiful girl. I, being as paranoid as I am, did not want anything to do with this guy, and apologized after politely declining, and tried to get away. But his grip on me tightened. "Aw, don't be like that. I really like you and want to take you out." I declined once again and tried to free myself from him, but he only tightened his hand even more, making me worried. That's when I noticed two other men sitting on a bench right behind him. They, unlike the dude talking to me, were incredibly creepy. They were also huge, and were staring at us while trying to pretend they were on their phones. And this is when alarms started going off in my head. "I just want to go get coffee with you. You really are beautiful. Besides, you're all alone, right? There's no one waiting for you, right?" By this point, my heart sank as I realized what was going on. This creep even lowered his voice at the last two sentences, so only I could hear him. And I saw how the other two men suddenly stood up at that, and started walking towards us. In a complete panic, and thanks to my wrist being so thin, I actually managed to pull away from his grasp, and once I did, I ran like a madman. I ran for at least 5 blocks non-stop, and thank God they didn't follow me. I went to have lunch with my mom and aunt, and the rest of the day went about smoothly. Until next week, there was an Amber Alert on a 13-year-old girl that went missing on that same street, the day after my incident happened, and was believed to have been kidnapped. So creepy dudes trying to take me for coffee, let's hope the only people you meet again are the police. This happened over 10 years ago. My brother was 6 years old at the time. We lived in an area where the summers were nice and mild, so we'd always play outside in our front yard as kids. You know, doing little kid things like melting down action figures, or turning over rocks, or following ants, etc. Very suburban stuff. On this day, my brother was probably doing something like that. My mother was inside our house, working on paying the bills. It was probably 4 or 5 in the evening, just a typical slow-moving summer day. My brother tells me that he was minding his own business when a dark blue, low-rising car suddenly flashed down the street. Now, keep in mind, we had neighbors who lived next door to us, who had teenage sons. The sons had a similar colored and styled car, and they liked to speed home. So my brother initially thought nothing of this and went back to his little kid routine. Suddenly, though, someone in the car rolled down the window and called out aloud, "Hey!" to my brother. My brother jerked his head up and realized this was not our neighbor's car. The man driving the car had close-cropped hair, so blonde it was almost white, and a reddish, ruddy complexion. My brother put his age at a 25 or younger. In the passenger seat, my brother noted that the accompanying man was either Hispanic or native, dark-complected, and young as well. The car quickly swerved and parked next to our neighbor's house. In a matter of seconds, the Hispanic man bolted from the passenger side door and lunged for my brother. Thankfully, my brother's animal panic kicked in, and adrenaline forced him up, and he ran fast into the house, crying and screaming. My mom instantly ran outside, knowing what had happened. She had a protective rage all mothers know acutely. She saw that the car had now sped away and watched as the exhaust trailed behind it. She got a glimpse of the drivers and the car as well, but sadly, could not get the license plate. My mom called the police to report the presumed abduction. My family is still angry about it to this day, but the police took their sweet time. They came to our house an hour later, took down the information my mother and brother gave them, and pretty much shrugged. They said there was nothing that they could do and didn't seem too concerned. My mom argued with them, but they just took down our information. I don't even think they filed a report. I don't know what exactly these men wanted, but I have grim ideas. We live in a smaller town that is close to a bigger city. It's very possible they scouted my brother and saw him as a target for human trafficking or for child pornography. I shudder to think what could have happened if the timing had been just a little different, if my brother had not had the agility to run inside, if his legs had turned into jello instead, or if our house door had been locked, or my mother not home. These two men cost me and my brother some childhood innocence. We no longer could play outside in our carefree way. So creepy men trying to kidnap my beloved brother, let's not meet. So I've never been one to think of this subreddit as a place for advice, but I've also never had a story to share. I'm very scared. About a month ago, I ordered a birthday gift for my roommate and received a notification that it had arrived. Well, it hadn't. My apartment has a letter in its designation, but the building behind me does not. If you put that address into a GPS, it'll direct you to the building behind me and drop the letter. Amazon is great. The third-party shipping company they use, not so much. Last time, my package ended up there. I thought it might be the same this time, so I went out looking for it. I was wearing my older glasses, some pajama shorts, and flip-flops. I looked ridiculous at 1 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, but not enough to excuse what had happened. I looked at the door that shares my apartment number, but it looked like no one lived there, so I knocked on the adjacent one. No one answered, so I knocked one more time, figuring he probably wasn't even home. Well, he answered, wearing only a pair of boxers. He asked me curtly, "Yeah?" I asked if there had been a package earlier, and he might have taken it inside. I stupidly explained the apartment problem and happened to drop my apartment number in the conversation. I apologized for bothering him and left. I went back to explain it to my roommate why his package was lost in the mail, when there was a very loud knock at my door. For some reason, I assumed it was likely a disgruntled delivery man. I'd been on and off the phone the entire time, so I opened the door without the chain lock. As you can expect, he was standing on the other side, dressed in a shitty tank top and basketball shorts. He looked at me square in the eye and said, "Hey, don't you ever knock on my door again. Do you hear me? Huh? Don't you ever do it again, ever, in your life. What's your name?" Before I could give a pseudonym, he continued, "Don't ever knock on it again." I pleaded and panicked and promised to never do so again, completely in shock. My roommate heard the entire thing, but did not see him. Multiple neighbors also directly witnessed the entire altercation. I didn't call the police because he hadn't done anything, and I was afraid he would target me. The next day, his neighbor, the door that I didn't knock on, delivered my package and apologized for the mix-up. It was Mother's Day, so my mom was visiting and I was at work. After all that, I began seeing him at my workplace. It's a public service area, so he's freely available to come and go as he pleases. The trouble is, I don't know if I simply started noticing him after the incident, but he's pretty distinctive and aloof. I'm certain I would have noticed. He just walks and has earbuds in. Occasionally he does something on his computer for a bit. He's there almost from open to close every day. It's a library, so again, this is normal. We cross paths almost every one of those days, too. I dress more formally at work and wear nicer glasses. Up until recently, I wasn't sure he even recognized me and thought maybe I was worrying about nothing and I'd simply pissed off an ineffectual dickhead. Then tonight happened. I was on the phone with a friend at about 9 p.m. walking down a road I often walk when I take walks. Usually earlier, but I felt safe taking my trash to the dumpster almost the same distance away at 2 a.m., perhaps naively. I spotted him alone on the basketball court, and he clearly saw me too. I tried to pretend not to notice, but kept him in my peripheral vision. I kept walking as if nothing was wrong, because up until now, he'd done nothing since the first incident. But I could see he was leaving the court in a direction to head me off. While he was behind some bushes, I turned around. He continued to follow me, and I simply stayed on the phone with my friend as if nothing was wrong. It's times like these that I regret not coming up with those safe word phrases to alert people when I get paranoid. He quickened his pace, and so did I. Eventually, he was too close to keep that up, so I turned around and asked him if he had a problem with me. "Didn't you knock on my door?" was the only response I got. I meekly responded yes, unsure of how else to approach this. Then he said, "So what are you doing here?" We were outside the local community center. Our apartment complexes are adjacent to it. We're probably both the same distance. He repeated this several times and continued approaching me. I could see he was going to lunge and attack, and fight or flight kicked in. This man is a foot taller than me and was shirtless with some clearly maintained pectorals. I chose flight. I'm not sure if he was half-assing the chase or if adrenaline kicked in, but I managed to keep out of his reach. He threw his basketball at me during the chase and grabbed for me several times. Finally, he stopped to catch his breath, and I kept running. I stopped running inside of my house, thinking he'd given up, and went inside. I locked the door and called 911 immediately. While on the phone, he began banging loudly on my door, like the first time. This went on intermittently for about 10 minutes. Apparently in that time, 2 different neighbors saw him, and one verbally argued with him and told him to leave. When the police showed up, I explained everything above and described him. They found him behind my building, unclear how close to the unit he was, and spoke with him. According to the officer that went to check on that side of things, he thinks I'm stalking him and stealing his packages. He also told this to my neighbor. I have no self-defense weapons at the moment and don't feel safe. I can't even go to work for respite. They can remove him from the library permanently, but I'm almost afraid to do that because it will only make him angrier and leave him wandering around here more often instead. I don't know what to do. I'm not sure when I can feel comfortable leaving my apartment, to say nothing of the fact that I don't feel safe in here either. According to the police, this only counts as a simple assault, a misdemeanor. I can go to the magistrate tomorrow to get a warrant for his arrest, but that's not going to be for any real length of time. They can't arrest him now as they did not catch him in the act or at my door. My neighbors are concerned for their own safety as well. I hope you can enjoy this story, as I've always morbidly wanted to share one, but I'm no longer happy I get the chance. If you have any advice, I'm happy to hear any of it. On that note, Doorman, unlikely as it is, please let's not meet again. Hey scaredy cats, thanks for watching. Feel free to subscribe and hit the notification bell so that you'll never miss out on any of the stories. If you have any stories that you'd like for me to read, you can find the links for submissions in the description below.